I'm here with, well, the way I see them is I have Ben here and I have Victoria here. I don't know if you guys can see our screens or our cameras, but if you do, please let us know so we know that everybody is listening to this. We're gonna start really soon. We just wanted to wait a few more minutes, well, maybe like a couple of minutes, just to give time for people to join us. And just to be, I think, I don't know if you guys can hear us. I don't see anything in the chat.
Yeah, Michelle Yates hopped on. She said yes. We
Awesome.
got a couple of yeses from her.
Great, thank you, Michelle. So
Hi,
again,
Michelle.
we're gonna start. They're starting to pour now. Yay! So thank you. And yes, we're gonna start really, really soon. We just wanted to wait a few more minutes. Actually, look at it. People are starting to join. We have a good session going today. I hope everybody's having a good Thursday. I don't know if anybody else has something to say. Ben or
It's all right.
Victoria.
I had Chinese food for lunch, so that's been a good Thursday.
Okay, well, it's 2:01. We can start now, just out of respect for people that are here early. Okay, let me launch the presentation real quick, and we should be. Oh, for the presentation, I do have to share my screen. Hold on 1 second. Sharing. Main screen, yay. All right. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. Let me go back because I am already moving forward. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the 6th webinar of the year. I'm really excited. This only means one thing. The year is halfway there. We're halfway. It's halfway over. But welcome for being here. Today we have Victoria and we have Ben. If you are here live, you actually can see our cameras. If you're listening to this in our YouTube channel, we'll encourage you to actually come and see us live because it's easier. It gives you an opportunity to interact. We like it very much. Again, I have Victoria Lopez, I have Ben, and myself, Jesus, and we have some information to share with you. I always do this. Okay. Everybody's muted. Sorry, but you can interact as well. You can write a question. You guys know how to do this because I see your questions all the time. And if the control panel, the GoToWebinar is on your way, you can just let it go, make it go away by clicking it, and it'll disappear. That's pretty much it, and that's it. This is our playlist for today. I'm sorry I don't have a Spotify playlist today. We have a small but very, very fleshy agenda. Some news and announcements. We're going to be talking, yes, the HMIS assessment training. We're going to be talking a little about that as well. Project start date, path and HMIS. So if we have path people here today, great. If not, we're going to have to reach you out later because there is a lot of really good information in here for you guys. And of course, there's a Q&A at the end, but that doesn't stop you guys from asking questions. You can ask them anytime. And actually, before you start doing those questions, let me ask some questions myself first. I have a couple of polls in here. I like polls. Let me ask you, first of all, just again, this is a very informal poll in a way. I want to just make sure how many of you have been here from the start, or how many of you have only watched 1 or 2. I mean, again, Doesn't mean anything. I mean, you probably are a new HMIS user. You just started using the system. So this gives us a good head start to move into more important stuff later. We have 71% of you guys voted already, so I guess we're gonna close it. Yes. 5 last seconds before we close this. Okay, we reached 74. I think it's gonna stay there. All right, let's close this now. And share your results over here. Awesome. I'm really excited to see that 41% of you guys are have been here for the 6th sessions. The rest of you, a lot of the catching up to do. I hope that you're okay. Even if you're not here live, you can see it on YouTube. And I have another question too, because as you know, we had an assessment webinar last Friday, and this actually it was not open for everybody. So I guess that's why I'm kind of hoping to see in the answers if you guys attended or did you know about it. So if you didn't know about it, I have news for you in a little bit. Let me give you some time so you can answer your questions without me interfering. The more you participate, the more we're going to talk, I guess. All right. We have enough answers in here. We reached 75%. And these are the results.
Hey, one of those was a trick question, guys. One of those was a trick answer.
Yes, that is correct. Everybody needs to learn about assessments, sadly. Well, not sadly, actually, it's part of the work, and actually it makes us better. Now, that 47%, fear not, we have something for you in a little bit. Let me see if I have another question to ask before I actually jump into that. No, actually, no. So let me go into that just now. For those of you who have been here for the 6 sessions, you guys know that we have been talking about the data manual, how it's coming. Well, actually, it is coming really, really soon. Now, again, bear in mind that this information that is going to be shared with you will not be applicable until October. So we have time to prepare for that. But it is good to know that it's coming. And with the data manual, we're also going to have a glossary too. And those documents usually go hand in hand. We have some sessions that are coming. We have tried to prepare you guys in a way, say that way, because it's always a little frustrating for people. Like, okay, we have work a whole year in one way, and now there's going to be some changes. What's going on? We don't want to create panic because there's no reason for panic. Okay, a lot of this changes. A lot of these changes you will not even see. Some of them, yes, will affect the way you enter your data, the way you operate your programs. But we're here to help you navigate those issues. And again, our emails are open. If you have questions, we're here to answer them as well. Another thing that I wanted to let you guys know is that for the SSBF projects, we had some questions, and I know you already probably know this. The repository will be open on Saturday, July 1st. We have a holiday in between. So the first upload is going to be due on July the 6th. Yeah, that's not a lot of time, I know. And this is just in order to be considered on time. But then the repository will close on July the 9th, okay? So you have some time in there. I know that a lot of you guys are on top of your information. You guys know your stuff. So yeah, you're gonna have a little more time to prepare that first upload, but sadly, not a lot. Just wanted to let you know. If you have any questions, please address them with us, although a lot of this information comes straight from the repository, so we will have to ask them as well. Now, for those of you that didn't attend that assessment webinar last week, because you didn't know, yeah, it was only open for COC projects and ESG projects. However, this training is mandatory now for everybody. And I encourage you to attend it, because we will be actually making sure that everybody goes to it. So we haven't sent the invitations yet. Those invitations are going to be sent today. I didn't want to send them because it usually creates confusion. It's like, wait, I thought it was the webinar. I thought it was the assessment training. It's the same day. No. So I'm telling you now, the invitations are going to be sent today. And you have actually two opportunities to attend the webinar. So I keep saying webinar, but it's actually a training, okay? The first one is going to be July the 6th, which is in a week. And then another opportunity will be on July 13th. So you have 2 sessions over there. And again, it is mandatory. We're encouraging everybody, regardless of the project you have, regardless of the funding you have. It is mandatory for everybody. We want to see you there. There's a lot of really cool information that we're going to be sharing. Actually, the next one, you're going to see Ben and Victoria. They're going to be there. And then the next one, I think we will all participate in it. But again, it is very important that you attend, because there's a lot of information in there that a lot of people might not remember. So we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And on that same tenor, I guess, we have been talking a lot here about other ways to interact with you guys, because yeah, we're kind of far away and we don't get to see you very often. You guys don't get to see us very often, maybe like once a month when we share our mugs here in the webinar. So we're looking forward to open more opportunities to interact, for you guys to ask questions, because I know that you guys have questions. So one of the things that we were kicking around here was to open maybe a session once a month, not this webinar, another one, an additional opportunity. We're trying to call it so far office hours, kind of. But we're still debating whether if this session should be on a Friday or should we have it again on the same Thursday. Obviously not the last Thursday, because this is the time for this webinar. Or maybe it could be like the second one or something. Again, we have not ironed out a lot of these details, but we feel, I feel, I hope my team feels it too, that this new data standards give us a great opportunity to start this forum. We want to make sure that you guys are in the same page, and we want to make sure that you guys have an opportunity to ask questions way before these new data standards are implemented. So again, be on the lookout, because we will be inviting you soon. Again, I don't think maybe next month, because next month we're going to have like 2 webinars back to back, and then we still have the webinar at the end of the month. But we do want to kick off a new session pretty soon. Now, having said that, you notice that I said that the data standards is coming. Well, let me ask you a question about that, because I didn't say when it's coming. Actually, I'm just telling you now. Are you excited about July 7th of 2017? I want to hear your answers, because of course, that's exactly the day the new data standard manuals will be available. What we do want is to make it available for everybody immediately. We want you guys to read it. We want you guys to start gathering your questions, because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions regarding some of those changes. And then we're going to have an opportunity to actually have a talk, converse, get in the forum. I guess everybody already have voted. Guys, of course there's something special about that day. Let's close the poll. I know, Spider-Man, I want to see it too. See? 71% of you guys are right. I do want to see Spider-Man, I accept that. And we do have some more information, but before I move forward, this I promise you, this is the last poll, okay? I know you guys like polls, maybe not as much as I do. But this is the last one, and it is important because we keep seeing this happening. So wait, that was the actual results. Well, that was it. Yeah, I'm sharing the results. Look, guys, I don't even know how that happened, but well, somehow the poll was close. I was going to ask you this. This actually was a good question, but now that you see the result there, well, you know the answer. What's the best way to prevent a duplicate records in HMIS? We receive a lot of emails requesting us to delete records or merge clients. And I'm sure that Ben and Victoria love those emails. I can see them. I can see them in their faces. So yes, Ben, do you want to say if there's a way to to prevent duplications?
There's a number of ways to work your searches and double check to make sure you're not duplicating any clients. As Jesus was saying, we do get a lot of emails. I think the harder issue is often trying to sort through family records. If there's a duplicate family where like half of the family's been duplicated, half of it isn't, that can be harder to sort out. But as you go and create a new client and you do an intake, new client record, you have a number of options of ways to search. And that's something to just keep in mind. There isn't a single way that's better than the others. We would recommend doing something like a first name, last name, maybe throw in the final 4 social security numbers, maybe not. If you put in, let's say you get a client, John Smith, and you put in their full social, but John Smith already had a record that only had like the last 4, it won't come up because the socials are going to be more precise versus less precise. So the more open you can make it, the more you'll catch in your net of searching. That's not to say that you should just put the first and last letter of the name. That's maybe too wide. That's going to give you too many results for you to sort through. It's not really practical. It's just one of those things to just to keep in mind. Duplications happen. As part of a shared database. At the same time, just try to be cognizant of giving a few different searches, making sure that you try the first name, maybe the last initial, something along those lines. Again, a John Smith, like a literal John Smith is probably going to bring back more results. Then that might be easy for you to wade through. Looking at birth dates as well. If you have John Smith, you could put in like JOSM and then the birth date. That might be a really good way to check and make sure you don't have any duplicates there. But that is something that we work in the system trying to work on. We have, there is a duplicate client report actually. If y'all bear with me just a moment, I can hop back into the system and show it to you real fast. I got kicked out here because of inactivity. I'm sure you all have experienced that as well. We have the same problem on our end. We're not necessarily any different here. But what you can do is, I'm gonna hop in and your IT guy can't remember how to share the screen. Let's see here.
I think Jesus might have to share it for you.
I'm gonna make me the presenter. Here we go.
Okay.
I'm gonna show my screen. There we go. And am I looking at There we go. Now you're seeing my my client track. As you can see, we're in Texas Homeless Network. I'm in test data areas, but if you go to reports and client reports, there is a duplicate client report. This is something that you guys can be running. It's available to you. It's available to your admins. This could be something you want to look at, but even if you're not an admin, this is available to you as well. I don't want to relegate this to just the admin area. When we run it, obviously we're running it on all the organizations, and that can help us to check to see different organizations that might have added duplicates that could have been, very similar. Maybe you don't have access to view those different records, so sometimes duplication does happen with permission to view, and it could make sense. However, if you were to select one organization, let's say your Texas Homeless Network, so you'd only have the one, you'll be able to see duplicates made by your own organization against itself. It may not sound like that would happen, but it happens quite a bit. I've even seen some duplicate records made by the same user. And that happens. I'm not saying that to like shame or embarrass anyone. That's just kind of the reality. We all make mistakes. When you go through and set up this report, there's some options here of last name versus last name sound like. The sound like is going to give you a bit of a looser match as opposed to an exact match of first name, last name. I generally don't select initial, but I might keep gender, just because we don't have a lot of people who opt out of sharing their gender in the system. That one's usually pretty consistent. Social security number, because that can be so inconsistent, I don't check it. Precisely because if I did, one record had it, one record didn't have it, it won't come up as a duplicate. Zip as well, just because it's not something that's kept in the system very readily. Some people track it, some people don't, but I usually just do first name, last name, gender, and birth date, and then report like any other report. And we may or may not, we're not going to get any results because we're looking at test data here. But if you had to run it on your own organization, you could easily see some duplicate records. We got a question coming in here. You do a search and it'll say that a client is not in HMIS when you know that they are. If a client we've worked hasn't, no. It could be that the client was duplicated. Depending on how you're searching for your client, it could be that the client was actually merged. That could happen. You put in John Smith with the client ID of 1, someone else puts in John Smith of a client ID of 2, and I merge the 2 and the 1 because we go to the older record. So you come back looking for a John Smith of client ID 2, and they're gone. So that could happen. If you're using the search bar up here, I never use this. I know Jesus uses it. Victoria, you look like you're about to hop in. No?
No.
Just because it works in different ways. I think if you, my test record is my initials. I think if you do last name first, that's the way to make that work. Yeah. So that is one option, but if you try to do it with other records, you might come into some issues. Typically what I do almost exclusively, and what I would recommend, is to go to your client area and do a find client. And in here I would do, that's how I would search for my clients. Scan client ID is also a really excellent way. So I don't know if you want to do a follow-up question with us here. If you're looking for a client when you're doing the intake, that's still is gonna be the find client search parameters here. And frankly, searching for things is a skill. We can talk about that a little bit in context of like Googling something. Google works with different parameters as client track. So getting to know the system and understanding how it searches is something that could take time and practice, like anything else.
And again, thank you, Ben. Thank you for actually reacting on the spot, because I have actually not told him that I was going to ask him to do this. It was a test. You passed. So yes, and we're not pointing fingers at anybody. We just want to make sure that you guys know this, because I know that it's also frustrating for you guys to have all of your data in one client and realizing, wait, there's another, I mean, there's a duplicate file in there. And at the end of the day, you have to create like an unduplicated list. You have your list, you have your data accurate, and this helps immensely. So again, it has been part of our philosophy, I guess, to teach you guys how to do things that maybe you were not doing before because you were not aware of it. I always go back, and again, this is one of the reasons why I encourage everybody to go to the assessments training, because when you train for the first time, there's a lot of things that, and I think this is, spoiler alert, okay? This is something I actually said during the training. When you are training for the first time, you're more in tune with the how, not necessarily the why. And this is one of those things, why it's important to do the search before. Yes, you know how to enter your client. That's it's very important, but it helps. It makes our life easier, and your life easier at the end of the day, if you know how to find your duplicates or how to prevent them in the first place. Thank you, Ben. I think I'm going to take back the session if I can. Let's see. I share back my screen. Change presenter. Wait, where am I now? Yes, okay. There you go. And I'm showing my screen again. Okay. Let me go to the next point, which is project entry versus project start date. As you know, as we were talking earlier during the beginning of the presentation, the new HMIS data standards are upon us. This means some changes are coming to an HMIS near you. As we move forward, we will begin to unveil some of these changes little by little. And we have actually in previous webinars. Again, it's a way of paving the way, so you're not so we're on the same page, you and I, and you don't get caught by surprise. And again, I was thinking about during the beginning of the presentation, I'm thinking of a few cool ideas to make this process a little less invasive and more friendly, more engaging. But we'll talk about it later. Today, we're here to talk about this one, which is this is mainly a change in the way we name things. Okay, this is project entry date. You know it. You know it. And let me see there. Okay, you can read there the, hold on, it always goes. Okay. This is actually the definition that comes with the previous data standards or the current data standards. Okay, this is not the new definition, but it is important to know this because this is what you have been working with. You know, project entry date, we talk about it all the time. And it's basically helps us determine the start of a client's period of participation with a project, right? Every time your client goes into your program and you enroll the client, you automatically add an entry date. Let me just start by saying that this change, it's in the name, but it also going to affect specifically one project right now, permanent supportive housing. Although the change in semantics, the name applies for everybody, okay? This change, and I don't want to confuse you, so let me explain it further. For permanent supportive housing projects, we know that the service of a client begins way before the actual move-in date, right? This is nothing new. Usually a client is enrolled and then comes a period of time when you are gathering information. It's actually stated in the project guidelines. This is not automatic, okay? Some projects used to have waiting list projects for this effect. So this change that we're talking about actually helps us capture that period of time from project start date to housing move-in date. Okay, it's a closer reflection of real-world situations. And bear in mind that this issue is something that rapid rehousing projects, for example, solved a while ago. And my rapid rehousing folks know that this is actually the way to do it. But again, before we get confused, let's establish some of the basics of this change. Project start date. As you can see in here, depending on the program you have, this might be a different definition. Again, project entry date is gone. Well, technically won't be gone until October, but let's just get into that mindset right now, okay? What we used to refer as project entry date, we will now be calling project start date. And this graphic over here tells you exactly how that works. The change in program and permanent housing projects is that the client, we're going to use the date the client is admitted to the project. Admitted here in quotes. For street outreach projects, this means the date of the first contact with the client. No change there. That's still the same. The same as well for emergency shelters. It's the date of the client's first stay in the shelter. Again, no changes in transitional housing either. It's the date when the client moves into a residential project, that first night that he spends the night there. For all other project types, service types, and everybody else, it's the project start date is the date on which a client receives the first provision of service. Again, you will notice that the only change in here is for permanent supportive housing, okay? And you notice those quotations, I'm sure you did. So let's just go into that and explain a little further. When we say admitted, what exactly do we mean? And bear in mind that this, what I'm saying right now, is just guidance, okay? I'm not talking about regulations here. This is just guidance. Keep in mind that before you enroll a client into a permanent supportive housing, we're gonna take this in consideration. If you admit a client, it's because, well, one, you have information provided by the client, or you got a referral that indicates that the client meets the criteria for admission to your permanent supportive housing. You have the, and again, this can happen even if you don't have all the documents yet, okay? Now, of course, number one is useless if you don't have number two, you know? It's the consent. It's the client has to indicate you also that the client wants to be housed in your project. And obviously, if the client is able to imminently access services and housing through the project, meaning that the project has a housing opening, or that expects to have one in a reasonably short amount of time. I mean, again, those are just like basic, regular, you guys know this. The most important thing in here, again, is just to reinforce that this is always the client's decision, right? But this is what we mean by admitted. So this is going to be now the date that you're going to use when you enroll a client, is when the client shows interest in the project, in being housed, and you have all documents, or not the documentation, but you have criteria that the client is set, or it fits for your project. Okay, even if you don't have everything. So that's the date that you use. Why? Because now we're going to have what rapid rehousing projects had before, a move-in date. All right, that's actually the next slide over here. Again, this element, it used to be just for rapid rehousing projects. It was 4.17. It's the date that the client actually moved into a housing project. Because again, there's a period of time where you're working with the client, you're already serving the client, but the client is not in the house yet. This is your new project entry date. Once the client gets into the housing facility, once the client goes into the unit, then we have a new date, which is the move-in date. Okay, this is going to be element 3.20. And again, I'm talking here just for permanent supportive housing. Okay, and this is something that rapid rehousing knew. This is not going to affect transitional. This is not going to affect emergency shelter, street outreach, any other project. Another thing that is really interesting about this is that, okay, as of now, we have been instructed to replicate, well, not us, I mean, where client track will do this. They're going to replicate the project entry dates for all clients enrolled in permanent supported housing. And those same dates are going to be used for the move-in date, okay? So this is not something that you have to go back and change dates and no. This will happen automatically for clients that are enrolled after October 1st, 2017. Again, because I don't think I said it correctly. If you have a client that was enrolled in your project in, let's just say, since 2013, and the client is in there in permanent housing and still gonna be in permanent housing after October 1st of this year, you're gonna see the change, because you're gonna see now that there's a project entry, sorry, catch me if I see it again, project start date, and then you're gonna have the move-in date, which is gonna be the same in this case. Because it's just going to populate, it's gonna be mapped to match the same date that you have there. For clients that you enrolled after October 1st of 2017, then you will have to do this manually, okay? You're gonna have to enter your client. Once the client goes into the project, once you enroll the client, you're gonna have the project start date, and then when the client gets into the housing, then you will have to go and edit so you can add the move-in date. Again, only after October 1st, 2017. This will actually help us also for your PIT and your HIC counts, the housing inventory and the PIT, the point in time count. If you have clients that are enrolled, let's say they have a start date, but they don't have a housing move-in date, those clients will not count in your PIT counts, which is good. I mean, because we're looking forward to more accurate data. This will help us get closer to that. Again, only for permanent supportive housing. And this is not a change for rapid rehousing or any other project. Everybody will continue the same way. If you have questions, please ask us. But let me show it like this. Maybe this will help you a little bit. I didn't create this graphic, okay? I'm not totally satisfied with the graphic, but it actually serves the purpose. We have in here what we look before the data standards changes, as it is now. And this is for rapid rehousing projects. Okay, so for rapid rehousing projects, this was the thing. You had a project entry date, and then when the client move into a housing facility, you enter a new date, which is the move-in date, right? So for rapid rehousing, the only change is that that project entry date is now project start date, okay? And the residential move-in date is now housing move-in date. So just like a little change there in the wording, but nothing else. There's no mapping required, no changes. Everything remains the same. So you rapid rehousing people are cool. Now, for permanent supportive housing, there are some changes there. And the main change is, obviously, like before, you had your project entry date, and that was the same date of when the client was housed. It didn't take into consideration the time you actually spend looking for housing, the time you actually gather documentation, you work with your client before you provide the housing. After October, we will see that change. You will have your project start date, and that date of occupancy, I mean, it's not going to be the same, obviously. Now, once the client is housed, you can go back and add the housing move-in date. I talk a lot right now. I hope it was not confusing. I did my best, guys. If you have any questions, please ask them. If not, I don't know, Ben, do we have questions in there?
Yeah, I was just responding to one real quick. A question about street outreach, making sure the definition of our the first contact is with the enrollment and the start date. I shouldn't use two different words. The enroll date / start date is first contact. The engagement date is once the individual gets into the program.
Yes. And actually, this is street outreach, and I think Victoria is going to talk a little more about that in a little bit. Victoria, do you want me to?
Yeah, I mean,
do you want me to man
stuff...
the slides, or do you want to take over?
No, I can take over.
Okay.
That's fine. Give me the power.
I'll give you the power. All right. Let's see. There you go. Stay tuned, guys. We have a lot of information about PATH now.
All right, let me know when you guys can see my screen. Yes? I'm assuming yes. Let me just make sure. Okay, good. Now, someone asked about street outreach a little while ago, and part of that is going to be wrapped up in this PATH presentation. So we might not have a lot of people that do PATH right now in the webinar with us, but this is still a lot of useful information, I think. There's also a lot of it, so hang tight. There's going to be like walls of text, but, you know, past few webinars have been really fun. Time to get serious. Okay, so PATH data collection changes. HUD and SAMHSA are making changes to lessen the data collection burden for the PATH program. They are now following a new philosophy, or what I'm assuming is a new philosophy. If you don't collect it, or if you collect it, use it for reporting. If you do not use it for reporting, do not collect it, which you would think that they were already using that philosophy before, but I guess they weren't. So they are going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Minimizing, going the minimal routes, and they're taking some fields out. So for 4.9, mental health problem, they are removing documentation of the disability and severity on file. They're also removing currently receiving services or treatment for this condition. And then they are also removing how confirmed, which is for PATH only. And then if it is a serious mental illness, how confirmed. And I know you might be thinking, well, I don't really know what this all means. This is a wall of text. Don't worry. I have a little setup to show you of what exactly is not going to be in the PATH workflow anymore. The second thing that they're removing still refers to the barriers. So if there is a mental health problem, again, that documentation of the disability and severity on file, currently receiving services and treatment for this condition, and then how confirmed are going to be removed. Let's look at what that actually looks like in the workflow. So let me just jump into, oh my goodness, client track kicked me out. Darn it. Just like Ben was dealing with earlier, now I gotta deal with it now. Hang tight with me, guys. Sorry. I had this set up before the webinar got started, and I was feeling pretty proud of myself because I usually do not have that setup done before. And when you know it, the one time that I try to get all my ducks in a row. Alright, so I'm just going over the PATH enrollment that I had created before this webinar started. The main page that I want to focus on right now is the barriers page. So this is something that is familiar to all of you, whether you are doing a PATH program or not.
Victoria,
yes.
Breaking up quite a bit. Is it possible for you to, I don't know, plug into an Ethernet cord anywhere nearby?
So the bad news is I am plugged into an Ethernet cord.
Oh.
Yeah. I guess the good news is that this is recorded, and so it will be of a better quality later on. But at the moment, unfortunately, I am on the best that I can be on, basically. Let me try something a little different then. All right, let me know if that's maybe a little bit better. Not really sure if it will be, but we will see. Okay, so sorry for the inconvenience of the bad connection. I'm not in my usual spot today, unfortunately. For those of you that can see, for the path workflow, this is the page where a lot of the changes are going to be. For example, alcohol abuse.
We'll make it work, guys.
Okay, sorry. And then mental illness. So these additional questions: receiving services and treatment, the condition is indefinite, documentation of the disability and severity on file, how confirmed, and then serious mental illness. These three specifically, documentation of the disability, how confirmed, serious mental illness, for PATH, you will no longer be required as of the new data standards to answer these questions. So just keep a lookout for that. The other thing that will be changing is the contact page. So PATH, just like Street Outreach, kind of expects you to be collecting contacts throughout the entire enrollment process. There is going to be a significant change, though, on the contact page. As soon as I can get to it, it's usually at the very end of the workflow. So if you'll just give me one quick second here. All right, the change here is going to be on the contact location. It's no longer going to be set up for either place not meant for habitation, service setting residential, or service setting non-residential. Yes.
Would you be willing to try shutting off your webcam? Maybe that'll use less internet.
That's a good idea.
Have a stronger connection.
Is that a little better?
Sorry about that, guys.
No, that's okay. It might be...
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes, so far it is.
Okay, and I apologize. I didn't realize that that was going to be an issue. I thought I would be set up with my Ethernet cord. All right, it's not so bad if you guys can't see my face. I can live with that. Yeah, so the client location will no longer have these three choices. SAMHSA decided that these were not very good at describing the client's location. So instead, what you're going to see is going to be staying on the streets, emergency shelter, or safe haven. That's what is going to be replaced for that location of contact. Like I said before, there is a lot of information here to cover, but considering that I'm having some technical difficulties, I'm going to try and get through these as quickly as possible. This is just a snapshot of the PATH data collection workflow, and Street Outreach in general might also benefit from just taking a look at this. SAMHSA really breaks up the workflow into 4 different pieces. So number 1, you have project entry, where you have that first contact. Step 2 is engagement. That's when an interactive client relationship results in a deliberate client assessment. It's also when you start collecting the universal data elements, and here in this I have PSDEs, which is path-specific data elements. At the end of step 2 is when you would determine path eligibility. So is your client experiencing homelessness, and do they have a serious mental illness? If it is a yes to both of those, then you would proceed with the PATH enrollment, or step 3. So the client found to be eligible for PATH and agrees to engage in services. Step 4 is project exit. You have stable permanent housing, or they have transitioned to mainstream resources, or client leaves the program, or there was no contact with the client for a set period of time, which is determined by the state. And all throughout these 4 steps, you are collecting your contacts throughout this entire process.
All right. Okay. So I guess you can see my screen now, I suppose. Right? Okay. Yeah. Victoria is going to be recording all of this information. It is very important. But again, it's not, like Ben said, it's not going to come into effect until later. One of the things that was very important and I wanted to address, because I keep hearing that question over and over again, specifically talking about projects, path projects that have services only and street outreach. What happens with my client if I have enroll a client in street outreach and then the client gets engaged? Do I have to exit them? No, like Victoria was saying, like the slide says, I mean, if you already started your client in street outreach, the client can finish the participation in street outreach. You don't have to exit the client, and then open it in services only. If the client started in services only, the client can continue the life in there in services only. There's no need to make any changes. And again, this is for path funded projects that have both services only and street outreach. If you have any more questions regarding any of what we discussed today, it's a good time to ask us. Do you have a question, Ben?
Let me read real quick. Okay, so one of the questions is about the changes being to path-funded organizations or throughout the HMIS.
It will be, again, this is just for path. We're talking right now about path projects, exclusively path projects. The previous information that I shared was specifically for permanent supportive housing. Again, a lot of this is important for everybody to understand, to know, because you might not be funded right now, but you might go in the future, or there's specific changes like the one we discussed previously that will affect everybody. And again, this could be very simple from just the name change, or it could be a little more consistent, like what is going to happen with permanent supportive housing. But again, it is very important for you guys to know, we're talking 4 months in advance, well, 3 if you're counting accurately. But this is not going to happen right now. This is something that we're working towards because we want to be ahead. I mean, I've been in, and some of you have been in a lot of changes. We have seen a lot of data changes regarding data standards. I have, I think, 4 so far. So I just don't want to be in the same position I have been in the past, where I feel like, oh my God, I was not ready for this. We have tried, I guess the last 2, we have tried to improve a little more, like, okay, what can we do? In the past, I think in the 2 data changes, 2 data standard changes ago, we actually gave access to our users to go to our training site so they can get a feel of how the changes will look, how will this happen, so they will feel better prepared. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're just giving you information way in advance, just so you are in the know, so you're in the same page. And if you envision that there's some changes that need to happen in your project as a reaction to these changes, well, I mean, you have enough time actually to prepare as well. I know that there's going to be changes in the forms. I know that there's going to be other, I'm trying to gather again until July the 7th, when I receive the copy of the new data standards. I cannot say for true everything that is going to change, but I know that there's going to be a lot of changes that will affect some of our forms, intake forms, assessment forms. So that's the reason why we're doing all of this. So if you start seeing stuff that is going to affect your project, this is a good time to start preparing, to start talking about it, so it doesn't cut us by surprise. Once October comes, every user should already be retrained or get all of the information that they need to know, so we're in the same page and we can, I don't know, I was looking for a good term, but I guess just wait for the wave and surf the wave instead of being engulfed by it. Just one of the things I wanted to share with you guys. Victoria, Ben, do you guys have anything else that you want to share?
I don't know. I don't want to like misspeak, but one thing to keep in mind as well when we look at certain changes, and especially like the PATH program and documenting severity of certain barriers that Victoria was going over a little bit, we don't really know how the vendor, how Ecovia Solutions is going to program client track to work on that. So even if you do use that section, or things may be changing compared to your other database system, it might not be a situation that's going away. It could just be that's not being reported on anymore, or maybe it's not, something's no longer marked required, or maybe there's a drop down changing somewhere. But it's hard for us to really predict how that'll come through in our particular HMIS. If you're nervous about losing functionality, I don't think that's something to be concerned about at this point. As far as duplication of clients goes, we don't really have a whole lot of access to create any sort of coding within the system. Anything like that comes from client track. So duplicating is just one of those hard things that sometimes there's a good reason for a duplicate record. If a client doesn't release the ROI, maybe that's, you know, they're willing to put themselves in the system, but they're not willing to share that information with other organizations. But they might have been a part of another organization in the past. They might have two records, like with two different Salvation Armies, but both are restricted to those specific Salvation Armies, and that's up to the client's discretion. So duplicate records can be a real challenge, because a lot of times when we make them, we don't even know we're making them. If we're going to do something that just doesn't allow any sort of duplication, it's hard to figure out what is truly a duplicate record and what is truly, well, one would be like, what is truly a duplicate record? And then sometimes the question is that duplicate record okay or not? Because there could be a situation where it's okay to have a duplicate record, depending on the program and the permissions being shared.
Okay. Another thing that I wanted to share with you guys is, again, I was talking about the assessments training. If you look at your chat, at the chat box on your control panel, I am sharing with you the two webinar links. You guys can start enrolling to those. Again, this is going to be mandatory for every user. If you didn't attend last week to any of those, to the training, we have two options for you here. I'm going to be sending an invitation anyways to everybody, kind of like when you receive the invitation for the webinar. And just I want to make sure to encourage you, and you encourage other users in your agency. Everybody that has access to HMIS and actually goes and manages data, enters data, they have to be part of this webinar. And again, I mean, like, we were going to make sure that everybody does it. Again, it's for the well-being of everybody's data. So it is very important for you guys to attend any of those two webinars. One last thing, again, our next webinar that is not going to be a training, the July webinar, or what I like to call the the 7th HMIS session will be again at the last Thursday of July. And I'm trying to cut my calendar right here just to let you know that it's going to be the 27th, July 27th. So let's not get confused about that. Usually I like to wait until the week of to send it to prevent confusion, because there's so many meetings going around. I mean, you have the COC webinars, you have our HMIS webinars, now you're having the trainings. It's a lot. And I understand that that creates confusion a lot of the times. So I don't like to create confusion. I don't want to add to that confusion. So again, you will receive an invitation for the trainings, and then on our 7th session of HMIS webinar. And for, maybe before then, or maybe then, we will talk a little more about the path slides that we couldn't get to share with you today, but we just don't want to take a lot of your time today. We'll keep it short. It's a holiday weekend upon us. You guys have anything else to add? Victoria, Ben?
I don't think so. It doesn't look like we have a whole lot of questions coming through. So everyone be on the lookout for the data manual and Spider-Man Homecoming. That's late
true.
Next week.
And thank you very much for everybody that is already registered RSVPing for the assessments webinar. We have already people in both of those sessions. So thank you very, very much.
Actually, Jesus, real quick point to clarify. If someone was in the assessments training last week that you did, they don't need to come to the next ones. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Sorry if that was unclear before, Ricardo. Yeah, if you're there last week, then you don't need to come to the next ones.
Yes, unless you didn't learn anything with me and you're like, I just prefer to hear it from Benjamin or from Victoria. But other than that, yeah, only one time is good. I mean, again, unless something else was not clear, and you feel like you will benefit for a second viewing, hey, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy like 4 times, so not the same, but hey, if you want to see it again, you're more than welcome.
We could play music in a training, have some, I don't know, Spirit in the Sky or something.
All right, guys, anything else? We're good, Victoria? All right, well, we'll cut it short today, give you a break. Sometimes we keep you for too long. We'll see you guys next week in the assessment training or the week after that. And if not, we'll see each other again in the next webinar. Thank you very much for being here. Again, if you have questions, if you have any advice, feedback, or if you want us to deal or talk about a specific topic in our next webinar, please email us. Get in touch with us. Tell us, hey, Jesus, I would like to, or Ben or Victoria, I would like to see a little more information about this feature in HMIS. I cannot understand how it really works. We're more than glad to accommodate those requests. So feel free to join us and to ask us what would you like to learn. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you guys soon.